Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm here to be talking about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now this appears to be the final film in the Mission Impossible franchise, and it was originally supposed to be part 2 to, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, which was the previous film that came out in 2023, but my theory is basically due to, even though that film I thought was great and a lot of people agreed was a lot of fun and really solid, it didn't do as well as I guess they were expecting it to financially, mainly due to Barbenheimer being Barbie and Oppenheimer opening literally 1 week later, and it just kind of ate up all the momentum from that film. So I noticed secretly they changed the title from Dead Reckoning Part 1 to just Dead Reckoning, and then they changed this to The Final Reckoning. And you could tell when watching this film, because while it does feel like the second part in a lot of ways to Dead Reckoning, where it still has the main antagonist of this evil AI called, the Entity, and that same dude who was like kind of working for the Entity in the previous film, and it's been set up as being an antagonist, going back in the earlier, first film, I believe. So he kind of has a little history with Tom Cruise's character Ethan Hunt. But besides that, it really does feel like there's moments in this film that really feels like it is the culmination of this franchise, and it's trying to wrap it up in a pretty interesting way, because there's lots of moments in the film where it shows like a montage of past moments from each film, and even them doing marketing for this, it was, hyping up each main film leading to this, like this is the grand conclusion. And while it does, I think end pretty solidly, you could tell that this was not their original intention, because I believe they were planning to maybe make more, but they decided to wrap it up after how the previous film performed, unfortunately. But maybe it is fortunately, because this film, while I don't want to say it's like bad per se, because throughout there's some really fun action and some pretty cool set pieces, like as you see on the poster, there's a chase sequence and Tom Cruise is literally climbing up on the plane and doing all that type of crazy shit. And there's like this underwater sequence where he's diving deep into the ocean, and that was just like crazy. But when it comes down to it, like besides the cool set pieces and all, like when I was watching with my dad, me and him were kind of like picking apart and making fun of some story beats, which I don't want to dive too into due to spoilers, but there's just some stuff that just we kept thinking about and like wondering why don't they, like, they could easily solve some of the stuff by either talking to, different people, because each, group has like their own plot points. Like obviously Ethan Hunt and his main crew are doing their thing, but you also have like the US government with the president lady in the film, and if they were to maybe communicate some, but there's also questions on how could they communicate. But it's just little nitpick stuff there. But like besides the story beats being interesting and not as strong, I feel, as the previous film, it was still interesting, fun film to watch. Going to see it with my dad was great, and besides us picking apart some stuff, we had a good time. Obviously the cast throughout is pretty great, like the old cast that's been here for a while, like Vine Rhames, I believe I pronounced that right. He was great from what he was in, and it got really emotional there with that. Simon Pegg obviously returns from the previous film. You had people like Haley Atwell, who did really solid, and there's some other names. I remember Angela Bassett, who is now the female president here. I remember her, I believe, from the Fallout film with Henry Cavill. I thought she was good, and the supporting cast all around was pretty decent, and there was some good action, like I was saying, but I don't know, it just feels like obviously the main set piece is that plane chase and all, which is why it's on all the marketing and all, which is great, but that's near the end. And throughout the film, it's, in my opinion, I want to say it, I feel like it's really long, because it's almost 3 hours. I believe it was 2 hours and 50 minutes, which felt like really long, because there were moments where I was like, moving around in my chair a bit, kind of getting like, man, this movie's still going. And that's unfortunate to say, because it really did drag on a little bit for me. Despite having some pretty solid action sequences, the story was so I wasn't really as invested as I could have been. But that's okay. I mean, for what it was, I think it was a pretty fine send-off. But I kind of wish it was a bit better, especially since it is supposedly the final one. But again, those were all my rambled thoughts on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Again, what did you all think about this film? I know I'm probably on the lower end of thoughts on this. I'm pretty sure a lot more people like it more than me, but maybe not, because I saw it was, while not badly reviewed, it was on the lower trajectory of the previous couple films, which were pretty high reviewed. But again, let me know down below what you all thought. If you want to leave a comment as well, that'd be great. And hit the bell to subscribe and get notified when I upload. Again, thank you all so much, and I'll catch you later. Bye.